Awesome. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. This is episode number 2, and I'm joined with my friend Nils Liedlich. Is that how you say him?
Liedlich, thanks.
Liedlich.
Good try.
Okay, close. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great. It's been an awesome day here in Sweden. What about you?
Nice, man. Nice. It's getting sunny in the UK, so I've just been going a lot of walks. Yeah, it's been really nice, mate. But yeah, anyway, I just want to start off give us a 2-minute background of yourself and where you are, what's led you to where you are now.
That's a good and hard question for the beginning. So the TLDR, or the 2-minute story, is that I'm half German and half Swedish, grown up in Stockholm, Berlin, and Vienna. And since moving back to Stockholm in 2015, I just went to normal Swedish high school, and I've always been entrepreneurially interested. And fast forward to last year, where I joined a young agency which did personal branding on LinkedIn. That's when I really learned how to write well, and doing stuff like Ship 30 and some other courses helped me get started with my copywriting. And so I was at this agency, was first a copywriter, and I quickly grew in ranks because it was a super small agency, and it also went, it was decent, but I'm not a wonder kid in that sense, right? But I grew up to head of operations. But then I realized that having your own business is the best way to grow as a person. So both as a challenge for myself, but also because I wanted some more flexibility and a bit more risk, I decided to go solo, and started out as a Twitter ghostwriter in February this year, so February 2023. And did the Codas course with you, met you there, and had a blast as a Twitter ghostwriter for about a month, until I realized, shit, there's a bunch of Twitter ghostwriters around. So I want to do something different. I want to get more niche. So I did a course by Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole, which again was about email ghostwriting basically, and email course ghostwriting. And then I just said, okay, YOLO, I will just ignore 99% of any requests that's coming into me, and I will just focus on one target group, which at the time was, I think, AI SaaS companies with 10 to 50 employees who have raised their Series A, was my description. And if you're thinking, holy fuck, that's specific, yeah, holy fuck, that's specific. And it became a meme, and everybody joked about it. But since then, I've been making more money and working less than I've ever done before. So it's been a success in that way. And that's kind of where I'm right now, fulfilling emails and courses for AI companies.
Dude, that's very comprehensive, man. It sounds like you are killing it, and I know you're killing it for a fact. So yeah, let's backtrack a bit and talk to me about the first DM you sent to Marvin to become the first full-time employee at his LinkedIn agency. Because I think, how did you find the opportunity? Where did you why did you decide to send him the DM? What was that whole story?
Wow, so you've really done your homework. So for context and everybody listening, the DM that Fernando's referring to is that I did a cold DM to the agency that later turned out to hire me, and where I also got head of operations. And the story behind that, let's take 2 steps back. So my first job ever was working as a customer sales rep, customer service rep at a Swedish shoe startup. And after working there for about a year, I wanted to become their copywriter. So I did a bunch of free work, redesigned their website, sent all kinds of work samples to the CEO. But he told me Nils, you're really talented at writing for your age. But they told me you need to stay in customer service until you've graduated from high school. And at the time, this was March last year, so 2022. It was just 3 months left until I would graduate. So everybody in my family was like, Nils, just stay there and just chill. You have 3 months of high school left. So just party and do this job, and don't worry about it. But I don't know why, but I had I was really passionate about becoming a copywriter. So I told him, okay, I'm quitting. And in this free fall, I started to apply to every copywriting job that I saw. So I went on LinkedIn, I went on Facebook jobs, I went on all, job portals around. And I think I sent about 60 applications. And at the time, AI didn't exist. So we had to write them all up myself and create my CV and all that stuff. And I got literally 0 replies. Like literally 0 replies. It's not, I'm not tweaking the story, but I got 0 replies. And I was like, okay, fuck. Like, did I overestimate myself a lot? I probably did. But then I saw this one agency that had an .xyz handle, and also having been a bit around crypto, I was like, okay, this seems like a cool modern agency, and I can shout them out. It's an amazing agency, notice.xyz. And I saw that they had this perfect copywriting position. It was flexible, it wasn't full time because I was still a student, and it just seemed like they were really modern. So something about them struck out, but I didn't hear anything back from them. So I was like, okay, it's worth going the extra mile for them. And I did it with a few companies, but Notice was the first that responded. So I looked up the founder, Marvin, on LinkedIn, and saw it was a really crowded channel for him. He had several thousand followers. So I went over to Instagram and figured out that would be one of his least crowded channels. And I sent him a DM and was super casual, like, hey man, love what you're doing at Notice. Here's 3 pieces of writing that I've written before. I think we should collab. And I didn't think too much about it, but 1 week later he replied. A few days after that, we jumped on a call. And then I wrote my first LinkedIn post for $15. And that's how everything started.
That's awesome, man. Why did you have such a passion for copywriting? Like it's kind of like a more harder to find skill. Like how did you discover it, and like why copywriting?
That's a great question, especially coming from a ghostwriter yourself. But I tried all of this stuff. I think everybody has been in this phase of like, I want to make digital money, like internet money. So I tried it all. I had my UX UI phase, learned Figma, built like an app prototype, dreamed of launching like a shoe marketplace app, because I had this friend that was really into flipping shoes. But that wasn't that fun. And then I tried programming, as everybody else has done. Didn't really enjoy it. And then I realized that I've always been at least decent at writing, and people have said it to me. And writing is also like a meta skill, kind of, that you train it in all kind of environments. So I just started to write and practice, and I think the first few creators that I consumed was Sean Anthony, and there's this other guy, I think I don't remember his name right now, but these like email copywriting guys. So I started to read their stuff and practice ghostwriting emails, because I still thought that I would be getting the copywriting job as the shoe company. And then it was all about ghostwriting these D2C emails, right? But I think that the unique thing about copywriting in general is that writing is just this meta skill that helps you on all kinds of your life. It's journaling, it's expressing your thoughts, and it's just communicating with other people. And that's a skill that helps you in all other kinds of environments. And I think that that's why copywriting is probably the best skill to start with if you want to make money online.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, man. I think when I first discovered copywriting, it wasn't so much the actual writing itself. It was like the psychology behind the writing, like understanding how do you get someone to buy something? How do you persuade them to take an action? I think that's really, really exciting. I wanted to like go back again and ask you, because you mentioned that you invested in Dickie's and Cole's course, as well as Dakota's coaching program. Now,
Yeah,
that's not cheap. So my question to you is like, where did you get the balls as a 19-year-old kid to invest that much money into just education? Like, is that not like a scam, bro?
Well, there's several things to this, and this is a really good question. So first of all, from where did I get the money? That's I guess the most straightforward question when a 19-year-old buys these courses. And my father has always been great at advising me to save as much money as possible. And even when I had this the customer service job, it was decent pay, and I worked there for 12 months part-time. And my father always said to me, like, buy a few things, but try to save as much as possible. You'll be grateful for that later. So I did that approach, and that's also how I was able to buy those courses with my own money, even though I didn't have much spare in the end. But the other question is, how do I actually, like, why did I, as you said it, why did I have the balls to buy the courses? And I think it's buying courses on the internet is a really scary thing when you do it for the first time. I remember when I was buying Ship 30 for 30, and I did this thing. It was $500 at the time, and I was like, $500, that's way too much money. I'm not investing that much. So I applied to their scholarship, and I wrote like this long letter of how I was a student, really interested in doing stuff. And I got it for $200. And that was still like except for like buying a PlayStation, that was my biggest investment at the time, right? And then it worked out really well for me. And I think after doing that, I just got into this habit of, yeah, right. And while I was at the other agency, they also bought a course for me, Junto, which is like a leadership course, amazing course. And that was also quite pricey. And I just got into this habit. It kind of became a rule in my head that if you invest money into skills, you will re-earn that money from the skills that you invested in. And that's really how I thought about investing into those two courses as well. And that's how I ended up buying Dakota's and Dicky and Co's course.
That's interesting, because I guess like both of them are super reputable as well. They've got the credibility to back them up. So I guess to anyone who's looking to potentially buy a coaching program, or looking to invest in their education, like, what kind of advice do you have for that? Because it seems like you're getting a good ROI on it, and like if someone was wanting to do it, like they see the value, but maybe they don't have enough money, or they do have enough money, but they don't want to spend it, what would you say to them?
Why?
Yeah.
It's like, why do you have, why don't you have the money to it? Like, why don't you want to do it? Why don't you want to invest in it? Because, and asking yourself why is such a basic thing, but it's always like, it really gets to the core of it. Like, I realized that and just to be clear, I was hesitant to invest money into both Dakota's course and Dicky and Cole's course, right? So with Dakota, I think I was the last one that got in. Also probably paid the most for it of the people that joined, because I thought it was closed. Like, I tried to book a sales call with him, but it was closed. And I was like, okay, almost felt this kind of relief of like, okay, I don't need to invest this much money into it. But then I spoke with a friend about it, who was also in touch with Dakota, and did it then. And for me, I kind of realized that I want to achieve some good stuff in my life, and I want to make a decent amount of money. And I just realized that the person that I want to be in 5 years would probably make this purchase. And then it didn't matter to me, like, how much does it cost, but more about like, what person am I choosing to become by buying this course and by learning the skills of this course, and what type of person would I become if I end up not buying the course? Because every time you don't invest in yourself, you're casting a vote into this voting machine of not investing in yourself. And every time you invest in yourself, every time you tip a waiter a bunch of money, every time you do stuff like that, you just, it's kind of like investing into your own mindset of growing yourself. And that's how I viewed it, those investments.
Talk to me about that more. Like, I remember when we met in Barcelona, you see money. I feel like you see money more of like energy or investment, so it comes and goes quite easily for you. Like, for me personally, I always found it difficult to spend money. I love saving it, but I found it very difficult to spend it. Like, where did you get the attitude to just be like so open about it? Because I remember when like we first went to a restaurant or whatever it was, you just like, yeah, I'll pay for everyone. I was like, dude, You're literally 19-year-old kid. Like, why the hell are you paying for everyone for, bro? Like, we should be paying for you, mate.
And this is such a funny question in a way, because I'm really not that person, right? So I come from a, you could say, upper middle class family, and I guess in most upper class families it is that way. Like, you know how, like, you don't need to worry about money, but you don't have money in abundance. So you're having this like don't spend too much mindset, and I really didn't spend a lot of money, and I still feel hesitant to buy a $5 coffee latte sometimes. And it's, for me, it's always more about, I had this weird mindset where a few things just sound ridiculously expensive to me, and a few things just sound like I'm so price immune to them. So for context, the Dakota course and stuff, they cost multiple thousands of dollars. But in Sweden, we have this tradition where you need to buy a bunch of like apparel for graduation. And they had like this hat, which cost $70. And I was the last one in my, I think, in my school to buy this hat, because I was just living in, I didn't accept that I had to buy this hat, right? Like, I was like, I will not buy this thing. But then after 4 months of my friends convincing me, I spent those $70 or whatever for this thing. And that's, you know, when you contrast the two things, it's kind of ridiculous, right? So I wouldn't say that I love to spend money, but it's just like there's a select few things which are myself, relationship, and health, where I just think that money, like having money instead of having those three things, just isn't worth it. And then specifically in like the, you know, buying food for you, it's like now it sounds like I do it every day, but you know, you get what I mean. Like buying food for friends or for my girlfriend or for family or whatever. It's like I learned this by Marvin Sanchines, the founder of Notice, because when I was visiting him in Berlin, he was always paying for me all the time in the beginning. And then I quickly picked up, like, first of all, that's really nice and it feels amazing. But second of all, like, I also want to be like that. Like, I also want to be the person that pays, and I want to be in a group of friends where like the people aren't clashing about who's like who paid how many pennies to the bill or whatever. But like, I want a group of friends where everybody wants to pay the entire bill for all the other people, right? And that's kind of how I realized that paying for friends that I want to, you know, get to know better, it's like, if I pay food for you, it means that I want to invest in my relationship with you. And also, it again casts a vote into this how do you say, this ballot of, I like to invest into my friends, and it's more important for me to spend $15 on this ramen soup for Fernando than to save those in my back pocket in case whatever happens.
No, I love that, man, because I love what you said about spending on friends is it's sort of like investing into the market. Like, you're investing into a relationship, which then compounds over time. Now I've definitely noticed that a lot. Like the types of people I want to build a relationship with, those are the types of people I'm more than happy to spend money on, because I know that this relationship, I want to play super long-term games, and investing money is just a form of, one, reciprocity, and two, trust. Like, the more money you give to someone, it shows you're generous. It shows that you're willing to help them in some way. And I think in return, people are naturally more inclined to want to help you back. Now, obviously, money is one example, but this could be anything, right? And it's something I noticed, like when you, like going back to that example, when you were paying for us, I immediately in my mind was like, I've got to return the favor now. But obviously that's like partly because I wanted to do that, but also like part of that reciprocity bias as well, which is so powerful, man. And even like now, like when I'm like networking with people and when I'm talking to people, I'm finally starting to understand what it means to lead with value, like provide value without expectation of anything in return. And I think that's a really good example of that. But I wanted to switch gears a minute and ask you, what's your unfair advantages?
Oh, yeah, you're like, just for context, I didn't get these questions in advance, but you're asking so many great questions today. But my unique competitive advantage is listening to other people or taking in information, understanding it quickly, and distilling it.
Break that down.
And I used to be, now you'll see when you talk with me and when you read my recent pieces of writing, that I have a very conversational tone of voice, and that's because I enjoy reading that tone. But my speciality in Ship 30 for 30 and in my previous text was always to be very succinct and be extremely concise, because that's always what I loved about writing. And that's kind of where that comes from. My dad is very good at writing succinctly, and I always found that there's just something uniquely cool about being able to express complex ideas in as few words as possible. And I wanted to also learn that skill.
That's really awesome, man. Can you just share with the audience, like, how did you, I guess, go about understanding like where these like natural strengths are, and how did you like come to the conclusion that being able to explain complex topics simply was something that you specifically have a natural inclination or a gift to do?
That's a great question again. And for anybody listening that wants to find their own unique strength, the problem is it's often difficult to assess your own strengths by yourself, because it's so difficult, right? Like, you don't know where to start. So for me, it was more a journey of listening to other people around me, and what did people tell me that I was good at? What was I getting compliments for? So with this distilling information, I often hear that I'm great at coming up with analogies that encompass a thing really well. And there's this book by, I have it somewhere here. It's called, I think, Width by David Epstein, or I hope that's the right Epstein. There's several.
I was gonna say.
Maybe the wrong Epstein, but it's called something like Broad or Width. And he talks about how generalists are great at creating analogies for stuff and like understanding things really like fast. And that book really is like a propaganda for generalists, but whatever. But I heard a lot that I was great coming up with analogies. And also I heard a lot that people like that I'm good at explaining things to them. And lastly, you've also, like, you guys have always told me that I'm decent at prompting AI, and I think that almost goes a bit hand in hand with how do I explain it in simple words so that another entity, even if it's not a human, can understand the instructions and deliver the output that you want it to deliver.
I love that, man. That just clicked in my head, that because you can explain complex things simply, that's why you'd now be good at something like ChatGPT prompting. That's super interesting, man. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, tell me about that. So tell me how you've been able to use this ability or this strength to your advantage, and how have you been able to apply it in terms of your business and your life? Curious to hear like what kind of stuff you've been applying it to.
That's a great question, and
Dude, I'm on fire.
I'm really spoiled to be talking about this today. And here I would actually like to take 2 steps back and mention that the most influential book that I've ever read is Essentialism by Greg McNeil. And it's really about distinguishing the essential few from the unimportant many. And that again goes hand in hand with this ability to be able to distill stuff, because it's, again, what are the vital few details of this text or concepts that you need to understand, and why are they important? And this book has been influential on all ends of my life, because it basically teaches you how to focus on very few things and knowing what to focus on. And I can recommend it to anybody reading this. And for me, it's been particularly helpful. I mean, first of all, in the writing process, because writing is, of course, really, writing is thinking, and I mean, that's common advice, but writing is distilling thoughts and making them understandable to another person. So it requires you to understand the essence of the topic and the concepts. But on a higher level, this skill of discerning the vital few from the trivial many has been important to me when I build up this really narrow category, right? So right now I'm working about like 15 hours a week and making more money than I've ever made working full time, because I just do the activities that earn me money and I just focus on one part of the market. And I've said no to, I counted on this yesterday, I've said no to, I think 3 times as much money as I've made this month. But that's kind of crazy to me. But it also is a good feeling, right? Because I said no to that money for a reason. Because if I would have said yes to that money in the short term, I would have had to broaden my offer, which would have created inefficiencies, which would have meant that I had to work more. But rather, I just picked a few opportunities, discerning the vital few from the trivial many again, with this competitive, unique skill, and focus on them. And that means that I have high margins, I have happy customers, and high hourly rate, which is kind of like, you know, the perfect thing. And that's how it's been benefiting me in the short term.
Dude, that's crazy, man. I'm starting to reevaluate my agency as well. So, we we originally started as Twitter ghostwriting, and then we branched out to LinkedIn, and then now we've potentially got a YouTube scripting one as well. I'm just like, yo,
oh wow,
this is a bit too much now. And like, given what you've literally just said, I think it kind of has like diseconomies of scale if you're constantly just spreading yourself too thin. But I really like the mindset that you have, and that was actually one of the questions I had for you in terms of like, being as young as you are, and turning down like multiple 4-figure contracts, right? That mindset, it does take quite a lot. Like I haven't been able to overcome that, and it's just like something that kind of respect from you, like I really respect from you, being able to just be like, nah, I'm good, man, I'm good with what I've got, and just doubling down, saying no to opportunities. I think that's a very powerful skill to have, and not many people have. So yeah, you're making me reevaluate my my whole agency now.
And I mean, something we need to acknowledge here is that that's the very difficulty of being an agency. It's not getting clients if you've been in the game for a bit longer. Like I know few agencies that are failing because they aren't getting enough clients, but rather the agency trap is that you get all of those like short-term opportunities. It's like one client that wants a YouTube script, or one client that wants, I don't know, like a TikTok short script or something. And then you're like, oh, but I'm getting 1K next month if I do this for them. But over long term, all of those small things, they compound, and then suddenly you have no specialization anymore. And every process, every deliverable, every fulfillment process that you have adds like exponential complexity to your business, because all of those processes, they need SOPs, standard operating procedures, that you need to teach to your employees, and you need to hire people that are specialized in that. And that's like just making it so complex. And that's why I believe in having like one process where I can, and especially now with AI, right? Because you can automate a bunch of it and use AI to draft newsletters. And I'm transparent with this, right? And drafting texts and courses, even paid courses, you can draft it with AI if you just know how to think about it and how to set up the right structures for it. And that's why I think there's never been a better time to be specialized than now. And I think that, I mean, let's chat about it another time about agency specialization.
Interesting, man. Interesting. I just want to backtrack a little bit in terms of like, where did you like learn, or how did you build this mindset of just specializing as opposed to spreading yourself too thin, and then like the sort of like second order consequences of short-term money grabs? I'm curious to like hear like where you kind of got this mindset from.
That's again a good question, and I don't even know if I myself know the answer to it. So, okay, let's maybe start a few steps back. And something that I have to mention, which I'm really grateful for, is that my parents saved a decent amount of money for me since when I was small. And if I wouldn't have that financial security, and of course, like I need to work, it's not as if they like I'm set for life or whatever, but I would be able to live a few months without making any income. And having that financial security in the back of my head, I know many people that don't have it, and I see the financial anxiety they are having. And I also encountered this for short periods of time when clients weren't rolling in a few months back. And that isn't the nice position to be in. And when you are in that position of needing the money, it's impossible to say no to money because you actually need it. And that was always something that, or that's something I got very, very wary of when I was in this financially anxious position a few months back. But I quickly realized that the way to get out from there is to just make sure that I had a few stable clients, which like cover the base expenses. Where when I have those clients, I just know that, okay, if just things continue as they are right now, I will have enough money to live, and I can spend like 35 hours a week building my personal brand, and like I will make money and I will reach my goals long term. And a combination of feeling safe in where you are right now, not needing the money, and having a long-term focus is really, I think, the essence of what you need to say no to short-term opportunities.
That's really interesting. Curious to know, like, what would you say to someone who's trying to start an agency, hasn't really got the lead flow, maybe landing the odd client here and there, but not really retaining them. And let's say they weren't fortunate enough to have that backing in terms of like financial security. What would you say to them?
I mean, I would say keep on trying. For me, the approach, it didn't work for me to grow my agency as a Twitter ghostwriting agency, like doing it for everybody. I wasn't able to win the market of Twitter ghostwriting because there were other alternatives around there. And I would have said that, like, okay, I was as good at roughly as good at writing as many of those people, and I've been in the game longer than them. But that's not even the question here, right? Like, I wasn't so much better than them that it was easy for me to get clients. For me, everything became so much easier, not immediately, but after some time, after I narrowed down and specialized my offer, because now I am the only alternative. There is nobody else ghostwriting AI newsletters and ghostwriting AI courses. Like literally, like you can search on Twitter, you can search on LinkedIn, and listeners, please don't copy this, or like if you want to, like please do it. But there is nobody else. And I'm not saying this in any way to brag, but just as a fact, like even if there are only 15 people interested in the service, I am the number one option. And that's so vital when marketing yourself, that you want to be the number one option. And that's why I like to hammer down this point of like, make sure to create a category for yourself where you are the first choice, regardless of how poor you are at your skills. And that together with a topic that you probably also prepared a question for, which is like giving yourself the permission to be specialized and to offer something that you haven't offered before, is I think the like, okay, so just to sum this up, this small rant, if you're an agency owner and you're landing a few clients and you aren't growing as fast as you want and you are feeling as if you're spreading yourself too thin, then look at all of your clients, look at the unit economics, which means look at how much you're earning per client, look at which clients do you enjoy to work the most with, which clients are getting you the most money, and which clients are getting you the least headache. And just look for the easiest clients that are making you the most money, and see if you maybe can specialize on them. Why are they the easiest? Why do they pay the most? All of those questions. And then try to narrow down your offer and be like, okay, what if I only offered my service to biotech companies? What if I only did XYZ? You know, like trying to go narrower and narrower. And it's scary in the beginning, but that's eventually how you create efficiencies and how you create a sustainable agency business.
Honestly, man, I love that advice. Like I've just taken copious amounts of notes, bro. Like I'm learning a lot from this conversation, bro. Yeah, I appreciate the advice you've been giving. I had a question. Cannot remember where I was going. Okay. Talk to me about the coolest sort of AI prompts you've been playing around with? Other use cases?
Um, that's a great question, and there's so many prompts around. Maybe some I shouldn't disclose because people would be like, "Oh, you could have charged for that." But really, the coolest AI prompts for me are the ones that automate fulfillment, because they are the ones that actually earn money. It's like, and I know some people will get angry if they hear this, but I'm not a big Midjourney fan because I see all of those like artistic images, and I'm like, okay, but like, what does this image of like an elf help you? Like, how do you earn more money with it? Like, okay, awesome, you can create this image. It's like, okay, if you are a photographer, but for 99.9% that won't be actually useful. So what I've been really using for myself, and also what I've been teaching, quote unquote, in my content, is how to use AI to create efficiencies in your solopreneurship business. And the best, like I would say, the biggest unlock, if you only take away one thing about ChatGPT in this conversation, it is that teaching ChatGPT frameworks is like the number one biggest unlock for me that I've ever had. And I originally got this, I think, from the Dickie Bush and Nicholas Cole webinar, but they didn't take it as far as I did because I started to experiment a lot with it. And basically think about it like this. If I just told you, Fernando, now, okay, write a Twitter thread for me, you would be like, okay, but how am I supposed, like, what should it be about? What kind of thread should it be? How should I write it? Or even better example, if I told you, write a blog post for me, you have never written a blog post before. You have no idea of how to structure it. But what if I told you, hey, Fernando, I want you to write a blog post using the AIDA framework: attention, interest, desire, attention. Attention means that you start with one paragraph where you get the attention of the reader. Interest means that you have roughly 400 words where you dive deeper into the interest of the reader related to the topic. Desire means that you try to go over from the stuff that you covered in interest and start to compelling to the reader's self-interest. And desire means that you're plugging a link to our SaaS product. Which instruction is clearer to you?
Yeah, definitely the detail.
Exactly, the second one. And you can do the exact same thing with ChatGPT. You tell it, I want you to create this type of work, say it's a text or a newsletter or a LinkedIn post or whatever, following the XYZ framework, where this part is the first two sentences, and these two sentences have these constraints. Here are some examples of how you can do this, and here's some context for this part. And where I'm getting at is that using frameworks, or by teaching ChatGPT frameworks, you can basically set constraints, instructions, and context for each individual part of the output, which allows you to create exorbitantly better output than if you would just give one set of constraints, framework, specificity, and instructions.
How much of your agency are you like accounting to AI tools? How much of it are you using AI tools for?
I think that's a question that's impossible to answer. So today I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about this, which was something like how I wrote the paid AI course in 2 days. And day one, I wrote a day, like one lesson of the course, and outlined the rest with ChatGPT. And day two, I edited the outlines of ChatGPT, and I was done. But then what I didn't tell people, and this is also the point of the post, is that I spent 8 days before that researching the topic. Because ChatGPT isn't a shortcut, and people have to understand that. It's a tool. So even if I can draft, anyone can draft 10,000 words of text of a course. Anyone can draft a 10,000 word course in a few hours using ChatGPT. But the actual skill set, or like the actual value add, comes from knowing what to have in the course and knowing how to write it in an engaging tone and all those kind of things. But how do you have the unique client tone of voice in there? How do you know exactly what should be in the course to be tailored to their target audience? All those kind of questions and all of this research needs to be done before the actual tool. So I would say out of the writing, upwards of 75% is drafted by ChatGPT and then edited by me. But still, it's kind of like, it's not as if ChatGPT is doing the work for me, because I still need to put in the hours of researching. And that's also vital for listeners to understand, right? Like, you don't want to try to let ChatGPT do your work for you, because you still need to understand what does the best output look like in this case.
Yeah, no, it's more of like an accelerant for the type of work you do. I'm literally mind blown that you created a paid course in 2 days, but like 10 days. Even that's insane, because the amount of leverage that course has got now is like exponential as well, especially because it's for a client, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sadly, can't disclose who it is, but it will be interesting to see the lifetime sales of that. And maybe we also want to cut in a little bit on your and my long-term plan, which probably also involves some educational products. Or what would you like to talk about next?
Yeah, I mean, go for it, man. Go for it.
So, okay, Fernando, the people listening to this, is this primarily like solopreneurs, or is it more of like people working normal daytime jobs, or what's like the stage? Just so I can make
I
this
think
useful.
it's just people either wanting to get into the online space, build an online business, or already have like something up and running. I think it's probably more early stage type things, because I think the types of guests I'm trying to get on are kind of just people who've kind of built something in the creator economy, and so that's the kind of audience.
Okay, but then let me make this simple for you. So if you're just starting out, quote unquote, with your digital business, something that I wish that I'd done much earlier is recording everything I do, like all the processes, writing down exactly how I do everything, what mistakes I make, what lessons I learned, all of this stuff. Just write it down somewhere. Write down exactly how you do everything. Because before you know it, you've created like a literal course of how to get to the point where you are right now. And you wouldn't believe how much of content you have sitting, like how much of money you have sitting inside your head. Because suddenly you have an agency and you make 5K a month or whatever, or 10K a month, and then you're like, oh, I actually have valuable knowledge. And if you then have actually written out all of this information, like how you do your processes, what lessons you learned, what mistakes you made, you are literally the best person in the world to teach the people that are one step behind you. And that's why it's so vital to really get down all of those lessons on paper for yourself while you are in the trenches. And that's something where I try to compensate for this afterward. And like, I've started to write up all my processes now, but I can never get back my 8 months or so of like trying out different stuff and learning things there. So that's really how you can set yourself up for success in the long run as an aspiring digital money-making machine.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. And then in terms of you, like, you said you wanted to get into product or productized info products and digital products. Like, why that instead of like the agency model? Because cash flow is good. So why are you trying to get into products?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think for everybody listening here, without a doubt, I think it's the best way to start with offering a high ticket service. That's where you should start. You shouldn't think like, okay, Nils says that he will do education products in the future, so I should just like skip the first step and jump there directly. I think offering a high ticket service is definitely always the first step you need to do, because you need to get the experience and you need to show that you're actually good at it. But here's the thing, cash flow is cool, but what's even cooler is not having obligations, at least for me. And the answer will be different for some other people that are like, let's maximize the cash flow and just work 60-hour weeks or whatever. But for me, I set myself this North Star goal, and I'll say it on the podcast now for some public accountability. And you need to have me on in 6 months for this. But my 6-month goal is to earn 50K a month working 100 hours a week. And that equals to an hourly wage of $500.
Okay, 100 hours a month, not a week.
Sorry, in a month, right?
Okay.
So 25 hours a week at $500 an hour. And then I was like, and the reason I'm setting this goal is not because I'm like, oh, I'm 100% certain I will make it, but more as a North Star, because it tells me how much do I need to streamline my existing processes to get to this hourly rate, and what kind of monetization options should I consider to be able to reach this hourly rate in sometime in the future. And if I would go and start AI consulting or do creator consulting, I could perhaps charge $250 or $300 an hour. But that's a $500 an hour, right? And then I was thinking, what are the types of monetization strategies that I can use that actually have such a high hourly rate? And I realized that it's just information products paired with an audience, at least in the short term. And then past 50K, we'll see what happens. But basically for me, the plan now is to make a bunch of cash flow the next 2 to 3 months. And then on top of that, starting to build my own education and products and my audience, reinvesting the profits into my audience so that I have a platform to sell these products to. And having like the lesson here, now I ranted on a little bit, but the lesson here is just there's so many shiny objects. Like people say you can do consulting in X, you can do courses for this, you can do masterminds for blah, blah, blah. But just having a goal in your head and knowing, okay, this is actually where I want to be in 6 months, it just gives you the super simple checklist. It's like, okay, I encounter a new opportunity. Does it check all of those boxes? No? Then I say no to it. Yes? Then I take it on. And that's like a 10 out of 10 opportunity. So finding those few things that can get you to your goal and staying with those is the important thing. And I might, fail at my goal, but at least I'm trying on, at least I know it's possible to reach this kind of sum with information products, and getting to such a high rate with consulting services or whatever would be rather difficult, at least in my situation right now.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% agreeing with you. And I think that's pretty much exactly my plan, because it's all about building leverage as opposed to trading your time with money. And I feel like with agency work, you're always going to be trading some sort of time unless you like scale out the agency by hiring writers, but then you might sacrifice the quality of the service that you deliver. And obviously you're still attending to clients and you're still required, like you say, you still have obligations, whereas a productized service or like a product itself does not really have that. And someone I really look up to on the Twitter space is Kieran Drew, and I really like how he gave me a piece of advice under like one of my tweets, saying to basically just block out everyone and only just have like 3 to 5 people who you listen to, and that's all you listen to, because everything else is just noise. There's so many different options and ways to get to the same destination. And for him, like just seeing how he was able to have a 6-figure launch in like 3 days, like that's crazy for his new course. And I'm 100% sure like it was definitely worth its value, worth his money. And I think like doing that for us could also be a really good option. But then for me as well, something I've been really playing with the idea is like SaaS as well. So like next step up, because it can be acquired, right? And so that's even higher multiples, and you're not it's basically like info products, but it can be acquired. So that's I really just want to explore all the business models, man, because I think just the game of just exploring business models is something I think that I really enjoy. And so it's not so much about, oh, how can I just get to infinite leverage right now? It's like, how can I just take the steps to play around with the different models to get to that point? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
I love that, first of all. And I mean, you mentioned SaaS products, and that's just one more reason to have a niched agency, because these SaaS products, many SaaS companies are just look at there's a German company called Perspective, and I think that they were a web design agency or like some form of like ad agency a few years back, and now they built their own SaaS tool to build funnels. And I see many companies doing that, right? Because when you're in an agency, you need to create efficiencies for yourself. And often it means to kind of build a SaaS tool for yourself. And I think that having an agency is a great launch vehicle to build a SaaS on top of it, right? Because first, it helps you to fulfill faster for your clients. And secondly, you know exactly what you need to have in the SaaS tool to make it useful because you are your own first customer. And yeah, what was the other part of the question? Sorry.
Leverage and exploring different business models.
Yeah, and leverage. It's a good one, and I think that inexperienced people such as me, like 4 weeks ago, would say, this is the ultimate business model. And I think it feels like that with every business model when you only look at the benefits of them, right? Because all of them have their advantages and drawbacks. SaaS has incredibly high churn rates, but I think you would manage this really well. And information products or agencies, they aren't as easily sold. But I think, for example, in my case, creating intellectual property, I had this weird thing. Like I thought that information products couldn't be sold that easily, but I actually had this client that asked me, like, just hypothetically, how much would it cost for us to buy your email course? And I was like, if the price is right, like I'm gonna think about it. But like, I think by just creating information products are useful in the way that they are providing, like they're selling you 24/7, and perhaps at the end you might create a SaaS that also does information products that create a marketing flywheel for your SaaS. And I think there's so many dope kind of whatever, like
synergistic effects.
Great, thanks for saying the word for me.
Yeah, so I wanted to like understand like what are some of the coolest experiences you've been able to have building a brand on Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as just like narrowing down your niche. Like, are there any sort of things that stick out in your head?
Some of the coolest experiences. It's a good question. Like from just social media in general, or maybe opportunities that
I mean, just social media in general, maybe like some of the cool projects you've been working on, maybe like because of, so where I'm trying to come at is like, because you've narrowed down your niche and no one's playing that game, well, no one's in that space. What are some cool opportunities you've been able to get, like cool networking opportunities, cool things like that? Obviously, you don't have to disclose in detail, but just like a high level overview of like the kind of stuff you've been able to, the kind of doors you've been able to unlock.
So that's a good question. And for example, this client where I did a paid course for them, they are they're quite well known, and I actually cold approached them because I saw that they were interested in doing something related to my field, and I don't think that I would have been able to. I was just like, hey, I saw that you want to do this thing, and I've actually done this thing. So just let me know if you need any help. And I think by being so specialized, I was able to get them on a call without really, writing the most intriguing cold DM. It was like a plain cold DM. It's almost laughably plain because I've written so many like long, comprehensive cold DMs with a bunch of like free work in them, and they didn't get any reply. And then this got me an opportunity. And also, I'm just there's this other guy. Like, it's so boring as a ghostwriter because you can't disclose the details, right? But
Yeah.
I had this other company which handles partnerships, you could say, and their CEO reached out to me and said, maybe there's an overlap between your clients and and our clients, right? Because they have some newsletter clients at their place. And just, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that I'm not getting more exposure because I've narrowed down, at least so far, but I haven't posted that much. But it's more about, I feel like the encounters that I get, people have higher respect for me because I've narrowed down so much. And that goes hand in hand really well with the principle mentioned in Essentialism, where he talks about saying no to like friend meetups or whatever, where it's like every time you say no to an opportunity, you're exchanging to be liked for to be respected. And that has become really, like, it clicked for me when you asked the question, because it's become obvious to me that, people aren't liking me more because I narrow down more, but they are respecting me more, and they are approaching me from a field of, like, they respect me more because I have narrowed down myself more. And that's the weird thing about it, because I'm a Swede. Literally Swede. It's not like, it's the least afforded country in the world. It's like, we're so friendly. We're like the Canadians of Europe. And now people are talking to me as if I'm an authority, and we have been neutral, except NATO, for 200 years. It's like, this is crazy. And that's something I've been noticing, that, like, by narrowing down and saying no to many opportunities, I've been getting more respect.
Respect, bro. No, that's cool, man. That's really cool. I love how you keep referring to essentialism as well, because I remember when we met up, I was like asking everyone what the sort of book that had the most impact on everyone was, and can't remember what you said, but I remember what I said, and it was essentialism. It's a super random book because it's like about productivity. It's not really like I want to say it's like a life-changing book, like a typical life-changing, like How to Win Friends, or like The Power of Now, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just a very, like, it's just a book about productivity. But it fundamentally changes the way you think about how you work, which I think it's very subtle, but it has such a big impact on, like, your whole life, because most of your life, well, is going to be work, right? So it's like, how do you optimize and focus on the things that actually move the needle, as opposed to just like doing the trivial many. That's something I've been finding myself doing quite a lot as well recently, and that's why, like, I admire how you're working like 15-hour weeks and just like being able to just balance that life, because the Parkinson's law states that, like, if you expand the time to do something the whole time, and so, like, if you have 24 hours in a day, why not take 24 hours in a day, because you're not really rushed. And it's like having to set those boundaries. I think that's one of the probably the hardest things as a solopreneur, or even as a business owner, to try and create boundaries on. Like, I'm curious to know, like, how have you been able to set your week up to work 15 hours a week, and what are some of the, like, tips and things you've learned that have the highest impact to setting and maintaining those boundaries?
That's a good question. And just to clarify, like, I do work more than 15 hours a week, but I only have to work 15 hours a week. That means that all the other 25 or 30 hours or whatever I'm working are for future earning opportunities, growing my personal brand, setting up systems, playing around with ChatGPT, like all of those things. This, for example, it's like, I don't need to work more than 15 hours to make a living right now, but I do work more than that. And my routine has sort of become to work 6 days a week because I like it. And rather working like 7 hours or 6 hours, 6 days a week than working 8 hours, 5 days a week. And the way that I've set this up is that I have my morning routine and my morning gym and all that stuff. And then I go and I have a deep work blocker, which is about 4 hours, where I just do like the one most important thing for the day. And then the afternoon is more of those like shallow kind of work tasks after a long lunch. I'm often guilty of the 2 hour lunch breaks, but I do enjoy them. But what's helped me here is, first of all, not being at home, because when I'm at home, there's just no, like, how do you say, like, no border, like no natural cut-offs between the activities. It's like I just am in the house all the time. But by going to coffee shops to work, I'm happy to invest money into a coffee, even $5 into a latte sometimes. Like, although I don't drink latte, I only drink espresso and coffee. But you get what I mean. So that's like the first tip. The biggest unlock for me was just like switching environments, and the second one was to exercise in the morning, because I previously had this experience that some days I just slept really poorly as a solopreneur. Then I got up and I was feeling like really grumpy, and I had my deep work block. And even though I had my double espresso, I wasn't really able to focus that well and work well. But that's something that's been a massive unlock for me the past 5 weeks, where I've almost consistently, almost every day, gone to the gym and exercised at least 20 minutes before all of my working hours, like deep work hours in the morning. And that has helped me to be more alert every time that I do the deep work thing. And that's kind of really minimized the amount of low quality deep work days for me, if you could say that.
Interesting. And that's really interesting. What are you currently working on then? Like, what's currently your focus in terms of like your weekly schedule? How are you allocating that? What kind of projects?
That's a good question. So it depends a bit always, because I have a recurring newsletter client. I have one recurring newsletter client that I can knock that off in roughly a day. So that's like day one of the week. And then the rest, it depends on if I have a larger like course client. If I have a course client, then I allocate a lot of time to that, because obviously you want to make it happen as soon as possible. So right now I have a few deals like in the pipeline, and with some decisions to be made. And that's perhaps another struggle of being a solopreneur, is like I need to be able to, like, if they say yes, we want the course, then that's like focus number one, really, really fast. But always when I have those like time, like when I have too much time for like right now, I focus on creating content for myself. I've been slacking on that as I worked on the business, and on building out my digital assets for myself. And to digital assets, I count information products, it's ChatGPT prompts, and it's automations, which is all this kind of leverage that doesn't earn me money maybe today, but that will help me in the future. So for example, yesterday I spent 4 hours toying around with a Make, so a no-code automation about creating a content system. And that's like, took me way too long because I'm a noob at the tech stuff. But that's something that will help me to create more content that's high quality in the future, which would then also help me sell better products, spend less time on that in the future, and all those kind of things. So to sum it up in one sentence, I spend my spare time building leverage for the future.
That's really smart. That's super smart. That's something I need to start doing as well. I think once I've got more time, I think, and once the agency is more stable for me, something I really want to do is just like keep the personal brand going in the back burner. So then it gets to the point, maybe say end of the year, I'll have a big enough audience who's engaged enough and targeted enough to be able to release something. And that could like come perfectly at a time where the agency's like kind of just like maybe plateauing, maybe like just running healthy cash flow. And it could just
awesome.
be really, really interesting, like transition. But yeah, I wanted to ask, this is kind of like tangent or like a just completely different type of question. So what do you think is like the main reason that you were able to develop like an insane level of maturity at your age? Because that's something I've always like been curious to know about you.
You know, I can say that I have an insane level of maturity, because then it would mean that I don't have an insane level of maturity. So it's kind of like
I've said it though. So
it's a paradox.
You're good, bro. You're good.
It's I don't even know if it's an insane level of maturity. It's difficult to analyze yourself in those aspects. But of course, I learned a lot from my parents, and my mom is a psychotherapist, so I learned a bit about psychology early on. And also, I'm like the eldest brother, and while my smaller brothers keep on telling me that I'm like the silliest one of us, it's like I think that you know, like having the feeling a responsibility early on for people like that is important. And apart from that, like, it's a boring answer, but I would just say like experience and genetics. I think that genetics also change the personality and character of people in some way, and that's just been helpful to me. And I mean, some people would say now, okay, Nils, you had bilingual, like you're bilingual, you had parents from 2 different countries, and you moved around between Stockholm, Vienna, and Berlin. And I've often been told by other people that are like, yeah, you moved around so much, so you always had to adapt to a new environment. You had to burn bridges. You had to build up new social circles for yourself, and that could be part of the explanation, right? And like always having to adapt to a new environment because we were moving so much can be part of an explanation to that. Yeah, that's
interesting. No, that makes sense. That makes complete sense. Yeah, I think because I think I had a similar situation. Like I moved around quite a lot when I was younger as well, and I think just naturally you have to, like you say, make more friends, make new friends, learn how to fit in, learn how to, I don't know, just not really survive, but like survive socially. And to that extent, you have to like be more observational. You have to like, understand how people do things. Like I think there's a lot that goes to it. And I think it's also a very good experience because you remain open-minded, right? Like if you were stuck in one place for your whole life and you never really got to see the rest of the world, you'd be very narrow-minded. Well, this is obviously massive generalization, but I feel like you'd be very narrow-minded in terms of like maybe trying new cultures, traveling new countries, meeting new types of people, trying new foods. Like there's a lot there that I think moving around and having that experience helps you with, as well as social skills, right? Like you have to develop good social skills to even like you say, just make friends if you're constantly moving around. So there's a lot there, and I think it's a overall net positive. Switching gears again, gone.
Well put, like really well put from your side. You explained it perfectly well.
Thank you, man. I've been practicing. No, I'm joking. Switching gears again, like what are the biggest lessons you've learned from being a solopreneur?
It's a great question, and I need to turn this into a LinkedIn post. Like you gotta send me the transcript later. But the biggest lessons are nobody's kicking your ass. Like you need to be kicking your own ass as a solopreneur. Second lesson is that your income is equal to your personal growth, at least over longer periods of time, because there's nobody to keep, like nobody except you will hold you accountable for how you spend your time, except your audience now because they know my income goal. But like nobody holds you accountable except for yourself, and nobody tells you, oh yeah, you got to be at the office at 8 o'clock in the morning on this day. Like you need to do that yourself. And the third one is finding a balance. You can't describe what a balance looks like because people try to come up with these generalizations of what is work-life balance, and in reality it looks different for everybody and it's different in all situations. And what I mean by that is that, and I talk with my girlfriend about this a lot, who's also like a solopreneur, is that sometimes I feel guilty for relaxing and not working, and but like I probably shouldn't feel guilty for that. And sometimes I like to sleep out, and then from a solopreneur's perspective, that could be like, oh, Nils, you aren't working hard enough to earn like your income goal. But then from another perspective, it could be like, oh, this is actually just a healthy work-life balance. And I see the kind of like the extremes on both ends, which are like, you got to do 14-hour days. Like if you're not eating breakfast while running and working, you are not going to make it. And then the other one is like, yeah, you need so much like self-care time. Like if you need 6 hours of self-care a day, and like both of those for me are bullshit, because it's this difficult balance where you constantly need to judge yourself / not judge yourself based on how much you're working and how much you're resting, and like kind of accepting your own decisions and having this type of self-compassion in a way.
Interesting. I had a question. Oh, I keep having like a very good question. I just mind blank every time. So you were talking about solopreneurship, and the biggest thing is, oh yeah, the working hard versus working too little. That is, I think that's probably the biggest challenges, because there's so many schools of thought, and again, they all work. So it's just like you have to kind of just like cater. And also, yeah, so this is the point I was trying to make. So the whole point of building your own business or solopreneurship is to build a life build a business around your life, not a life around your business. And if you are working more than you want to, then what's the point of doing all of this? Because the whole point of doing this is to have a life that you want to live and you're happy to live, and it doesn't it aligns to all your goals and values and things like that. And so if you're just working like 12-hour days, if that's what you like, then fair enough. But I think for a majority of people, they just want a level of freedom when they can earn an income that is healthy to them, but then they also have more time to spend with their loved ones, to spend doing things that they want to do, to go for 2-hour walks, to go for 2-hour lunch breaks. Do you know what I mean? Like 2-hour gym sessions, whatever it is you want to do. And I think that's definitely something that I think has to be a key reframe, like a constant reframe, because even being on Money Twitter, or the side of Twitter that we're on, like there's always people telling you have to do it like this. And that's something that I really just want to speak out against. And that's like kind of why I'm trying to target my content at right now, because I see so many people like just being prescriptive, and I know why, right? Because it's worked for them. So if they're trying to sell a course or coaching program, then that's how they sell. And also like it's a copywriting technique to be like assertive when you talk. There's loads of different factors that go into it. And once like you understand the dynamics and the sort of underlying marketing behind it, that's when you're like, oh, okay, maybe what they say isn't completely right, or maybe it's more subjective than they make it out to be. So that's really, really interesting point that you brought up. And yeah, like let's wrap this up then. So final question, what challenge would you give to the audience?
Can I give two challenges?
Go for it, man.
So the first challenge would be to automate one repetitive process that's taking you 1 hour a week. Like just spend 1 hour, and then you won't have to spend this repetitive hour on the task ever again. That's the first challenge. And you can do that with no-code tools, or you can do that with ChatGPT. But I just want to open the door to creating efficiencies in your business. And I want you to instill that mindset early, because like with every automation you're building, you're outsourcing time to machines. And I want you to do that as early as possible, dear listener, because I believe in you, and I think that you have better stuff to do than to check your emails and that kind of stuff, and uploading podcast transcripts or whatever. I can help you with automating that. and the second challenge is to do nothing for 1 hour. Like nothing.
Yeah, what if you automate? You find an hour saved, and then you use that hour saved to do nothing. So that's technically one challenge.
That's a good one, because I think that doing nothing is so underrated, and people will say that this is super generic for me, but what I really mean by that is that most of the quote unquote driven personalities, it's so easy. I think Tim Ferriss said this on some podcast sometime. It's like the hardest thing for a driven person, like they are like, oh, we can't, like I can do anything. And then the coach is like, yeah, but can you do nothing for an hour? Because you have so many ideas, you always want to do the next thing, but just having 1 hour for yourself and doing nothing is a difficult practice.
I love that,
man. It is difficult.
I agree with you, man. Even I struggle. I always have like ideas in the back of my mind. Like if I'm walking to the train station, I'm like, oh, how can I optimize this process? Oh, what should I say to this client? Or how do I get my always just in the back of my mind, because it's an obsession. Like it can sometimes be like unhealthy. And like my parents call me out regularly. They're like, dude, just rest, man. Just literally chill out. Like stop trying to like be on all the time. But yeah, that was great, man. Great way to end the podcast. And yeah, where can people check you out?
On Twitter at Nils Liedlich, that is NILSLIEDLICH, and on LinkedIn also Nils Liedlich. And I'm just plugging this shamelessly, but if you're interested in going deeper into no-code automations, saving time and automating stuff with ChatGPT, I have this one course called Solopreneur Supercharge. It's a free course. I won't charge you anything for it. And there it's like 36 pages where I really dive deep into all of those efficiency things that I kind of touched on in this newsletter. Maybe we can link it in the podcast notes.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll link it on the notes. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Nils Liedlich. Liedlich. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll train the name for the next episode, but it works for now. Take care.
Awesome. Bye, guys.